The purpose of this video is to build on from the last video in which we introduced the idea of how to reference and how to cite the arguments that you're trying to make in your written work. In the last video, we looked at the example of a bank and how we might pull information down from the internet or online sources and start to weave that into your arguments, weave it into your discussions, and try to make some important, well-informed points about the work that you're writing. The point in which we left the last video was when we got to the stage where we'd got the stuff from the online sources, from the journal articles, from the books, and we were trying to take that a step further and put it into our work. The purpose of this video is to show how you will cite those examples in your written work. So let's have a look at what is referencing and how to cite your arguments. So building on the last video, hopefully you've already looked at that, hopefully you've already seen that, and we can build on the work that you've already done and the skills that you've already developed from that. So when it comes to references and managing your references, you really have two choices. How do you manage your references is the question, and how do you manage what you've read? How do you go from reading something to kind of having that knowledge about what you've read and how it can be accessed again? As somebody that reads reports and marks work regularly, there is nothing more frustrating than reading a really good point in a piece of work and thinking, that's great, I want to find that, I want to use that myself, I'd like to be able to look for that information, and there's no citation there, there's no link, there's no way to access that information. And just imagine how frustrating that would be for you if you were reading a really good report online. It contains some information that's really useful for you. If you can't get access to that information through the in-text citations, the work has failed you in some ways. So how will you go about this? What do you do? And there are four primary different ways in which you might go about your referencing. So number one, I think we all start here at some point in our academic journeys. Don't bother. Don't reference anything. Just read what you read, write your assignments, and just hope for the best. It's advantageous in that it's fast, it's quick, it saves you a lot of time. However, it's problematic in that none of your arguments are backed up, none of your work is cited, and you're not going to last very long in a university setting producing work at that quantity and that standard. Secondly, you could manually, every time you read something, every time you look at something online, every time you've read a book, every time you've read something in your module guide, you could just write it down in your book. So, little black book, put it in there, and then when you're finished, hope to God you can find it again and put it in there. That's another good, reasonable way of keeping up to date with what you've read and the work that you're writing. Third, a perfectly valid approach is Microsoft Word, using the inbuilt Microsoft Word or LibreOffice or Apple Pages thing that's already built into there. So, for example, I can show you a normal Word document, and if I was writing an assignment for this, let's just say we're talking about research methods. So I've just read the book by Smith, and Smith talks about an important point that I would like to make in my work. So I just come up to here on the reference tab, I type insert citation, add new source, and then it's a book, so I can leave it at book, and type in Smith, and his initial is C, and the book is just called Research Methods. It's from 2020. It was published in Sheffield by Penguin Books, let's just say. So I can save that now as a citation in my work, and that's put it in there for me. So if I was writing my work now, I could just put research methods are considered important, and then I've got a nice citation in there demonstrating what I've read, building upon what I'm talking about, and I would continue to write and then probably have more citations as I went through that work. It's a perfectly acceptable way to do it. It's a really safe way to do it. I think when I started working on academic work myself, I was a little bit nervous about putting over all my references to Microsoft Word in case it didn't work. It will work. It is a safe way to do your references. And if you come down, let's just pretend this is a fully finished piece of work. You can click Insert Bibliography, And then what Microsoft Word will do is insert a full bibliography for you. So here we've only got one citation, one thing for our bibliography. That's perfectly fine. So this is the second idea, Microsoft Word. The third idea, using that as a reference manager. Now, the fourth and final way I'd like to share with you today is the way that I would use to do my citations. It's a slightly more professional way, and it's hopefully a really good way to get on top of your work and keep a good bank of the information that you've found. It's called Mendeley. It's a tool that's available on the internet for free. It's nothing to do with me. I just use it as an academic. And essentially what Mendeley will do is you can read things online, pull them into the program, and it keeps a track of all those different things for you. So, for example, I will show you my Mendeley. This is a track of everything that I've read. Every time I look at something, every time I read something, I put it straight into my Mendeley. If you download the document or the book, you can put it straight into there, and you can see I have 768 documents in mine. So there's a huge number of accumulated knowledge in there. And particularly if it's a PDF, it's really useful. So you can see this is something I was reading recently. And if I click on it, I can go straight to reading that paper or that article. A very useful way of doing things, and a very good way of using technology to keep track of everything you've read. So, if we were to go back to Microsoft Word, we could, let's just forget this one for a moment, forget that. Let's say we're using Mendeley. I've got the add-on or the add-in installed for Microsoft Word, and I just click Insert Citation. Now, the benefit of Mendeley is, let's say, for example, I'd read Smith recently, however, I've forgotten the title of the paper or the book or the author, but I know it's about research methods. So I could just type in here, research methods, and I can come down to try and find the particular book that I was reading. And let's just say it was using thematic analysis in psychology research by Bourne and Clark. That's a good example of research methods and analysis. So I put that reference straight in there. I'd forgotten Bourne and Clark's name. It doesn't matter. I just remember the title of the book, and Mendeley is very good at remembering that on my behalf. And then I could continue to write and then progress. And essentially, what I can do is use Mendeley as a memory bank for me. Something else I'd like to talk to you about is the idea of shortening your in-text citations in order to make your work better integrated, a better rounded piece of work. So, for example, it's perfectly acceptable to make an argument and put a reference at the end. That's a really good way to support your claims, support your arguments, and produce a good piece of work. However, sometimes the author in which you're talking about will naturally crop up in the text. So, for example, I might say here, Mayer and Allen argue that this is not important. They might claim the opposite. Now, what I could do, I could just put in here Allen and Mayer, see if I can find the exact paper. One downside to having lots of literature is that it sometimes takes you longer to find. It's just there, and I can put that in just like that. Perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable, a really good way to do it. However, you'll notice that Mayer and Allen has already cropped up in my text, so I'm putting it twice, which is not really a good use of my words. It's not a good use of space. So what would be better is if I put the same thing, and I now know it's 1996, so hopefully I can get to it quicker. I can put it in and then just suppress the author like this. And then suddenly you've got a really nice built-in citation into your text. If you progress and work your way through like that, it's a really good way and a really professional way to produce the work that you're putting together. The same thing with Mendeley. Once you've finished and you'd like to put in your reference list, you just insert bibliography and it puts it in for you. Two nice references there to support the work that you have written. Another advantage of using a reference manager as opposed to a little black book is that you can also change your referencing style. So for example, this is Harvard, and then last minute I just realized that my university doesn't use Harvard, it uses APA 6, so I can just go and pick the citation style that is right for me, and that's just fixed it right there. Now, it's really important to think about the relevance of your references. So As someone that marks a lot of work and does a lot of work with students, I would argue that your referencing is worth about 5% of your mark directly, just in terms of style, and then probably much more in terms of what you've actually cited and what's in your arguments. But let's just say that we're talking specifically about just the referencing, the citations. If that's worth 5%, learning this skill and getting used to this software and getting organized with your approach, if that's worth 5%, that's the difference between a 2-1 and a first. It's the difference between a 2-2 and a 2-1. It's sometimes the difference between a pass and a fail. So please take a look at this. It's a really simple tool. It's all free. It can help you with your reading. As you progress with Mendeley, the more you do with it, the better it gets. So for example, I've been using it for 4 or 5 years now, and any reference that I want is kind of in there already, unless it's something new. So if I want to think about something I've read a few years ago, I just go into there, find out when it was added, and it really helps me along. So referencing is not something to be scared of. It's something that can really help you. It's something that can really improve the work that you guys are doing. I wish you well, and I'll see you in the next video.